Hello and welcome to Note Doctors. My name is Paul.
My name is Jen.
My name is Ben.
And we are your hosts. We are all university music theory instructors who are passionate about music theory and music theory instruction. In this podcast, we will be talking about all things theory with some of the best music theory teachers in the country. If you want to know more about music theory and the most effective and innovative ways to teach it, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome back to Note Doctors, the Music Theory and Pedagogy podcast. So today is a little bit different of an episode, but one of the things that I think gets you into teaching and wanting to learn more about teaching is having great teachers as examples. When you see them, whether it's a band director or a choir teacher or a theory professor in college, when you experience those master teachers, that inspires you, to be perhaps to be a teacher yourself. And I think for the three of us, I probably can safely say that we've had numerous great teachers in our lives and that have affected us profoundly and continue to affect us. And whenever this episode comes out, I'm not sure when this is going to be coming out or when you're actually listening to this, but about a week ago from this recording, we lost one of those teachers that we all had that really made a profound impact on each of our lives. And so we thought we would spend this episode just sharing our memories and reflecting on his legacy and all that he did for us. And I'm sure if you went to the University of North Texas and you're listening to this within the past 40 years, you probably ran into a Dr. Jenn Cho as well, or perhaps at a conference or any number of things. And so we're going to just spend some time talking about the things that we remember and the things that stick with us today. And so before, though, we kind of get into this, Ben, you wrote, you kind of helped put together this wonderful kind of in memoriam statement about Dr. Cho. And so if you could kind of read that, just give us a background on his very long career.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know Dr. Jenn Cho, we had a post that we put together from UNT, and I'll read that now. A member of the faculty from 1972 to 2016, so that's 44 years. University of North Texas Regents Professor of Music Theory, Jenn Cho, died October 29th, 2023. He received his PhD in music theory from Northwestern University and was a guest professor in Hong Kong and Taiwan. At UNT, he taught pedagogy of music theory analysis, and oral skills. Jenn was a charter editorial board member of the Journal of Music Theory Pedagogy and an editorial board member of the Journal of Music in China, which is based out of Los Angeles. His compositions and arrangements for voice, piano, ensemble, and orchestra have been performed in the U.S., Europe, and Asia. He was commissioned to write incidental music for a stage play, Confucius, and a musical setting of a literary tone poem, Abraham Lincoln, The Whole Heart, for orchestra, chorus, soli, and narrators. His publications include theory pedagogy manuals and monographs in music theory and also historical ethnomusicology. Those include Theories and Practice of Harmonic Analysis, published by Mellon, The Discovery of Musical Equal Temperament in China and Europe in the 16th Century, also published by Mellon. One of his monographs, titled The Replica of the Ark of the Covenant in Japan, The Mystery of Mifune Shiro. I probably didn't quite say that correctly, I'm sorry. Fused religion studies with Japanese cultural history for a glimpse into the interplay of new and old traditions. Dr. Cho presented lectures, clinics, and workshops in music theory, conducting, and composition in 6 countries outside of the United States. And he taught a sequence of courses in music theory and culture of China and Japan, in addition to directed field study programs to Asia. So to say that his contributions were vast would be an understatement, I think. Dr. Cho did quite a bit, especially with music theory outside of the United States and Europe, a really impressive kind of body of work. And that didn't even say anything about just his personality or his way of going about his day, which to me is kind of in the forefront of my memory of Dr. Cho, is his passion for the things that he taught and the way he went about teaching his pedagogy courses. So yeah.
Yeah, I believe we all took theory pedagogy with Dr. Cho, at least one semester, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I had both semesters with him. Yeah. So that was actually one of the very first classes that I took at UNT. And I was so excited about it because it's what I wanted to do. I was like, well, I want to teach theory. It's a class about teaching theory. And then he could be kind of terrifying in that he had just the absolute highest expectations. And I think, we felt a lot of respect for him. He was like obviously really profoundly talented. And so no one wanted to be the one to let him down in class or whatever, or not be able to do what he was asking. But the stories are endless. But the class happened in this, if you went to UNT, you'll probably be able to picture the room I'm talking about. It's this weird corner room. It's literally like set into this odd corner of the building, and it's a strange shape, and one whole wall of it is basically windows, so it's a very bright, like airy kind of
room. It's like a trapezoid, right?
It is,
trapezoid shape, right?
Yeah, and it looks out over the courtyard. And that might even be like the first class that I ever had in graduate school was Ped Theory with him, because it was at 9 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I want to say, and so I had that with him as a brand new master's student, and he pushed us really hard, but I think a lot of my oral skills I owe to him, because he made me work so hard. I mean, I remember he had us do this thing called tonal indexing. Mm-hmm. And I make my students do it. I just had students do it on an exam yesterday. And it's such a useful tool for helping students lock into key and hearing the differences between key, figuring out where the half steps are, all of those kinds of things. But we had some really hard ones. Like, he made us work through kind of more and more advanced examples. And I remember by the end, the singing things that he told us, like, I could call on any of you and make you do this in any key and whatever in class. I had them laminated and literally like on the wall of my shower, because that's how much I was practicing these. Like, they were everywhere. I had copies of them everywhere because I was practicing them all the time. I was at work, like in the closet, singing these little melodies kind of constantly. But yeah.
Yeah, I still use the tonal indexing as well. And so if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, I know it's a podcast, so it's kind of hard to imagine, but it's basically a bunch of note heads on a staff without a clef or a key signature or rhythms or bar lines.
I think they're usually there's
mine
bar lines. No bar lines. But
no
there
bar
are
lines.
Clefs.
Nope, there's no clefs. Or mine doesn't have clefs.
Huh? I don't know. The ones he gave us, we had a few in treble and a few in bass.
Okay, because I don't have clefs on mine, but the beauty of it is that that can be a do, that can be a ti, that can be a may, it could be any syllable, and so you really learn about where those half steps are at, and you can modulate throughout them. And you're right. I mean, some of them as they get more advanced are pretty wild. I mean, you're jumping all over the place.
Tense and yes.
Yeah, they had all kinds of little Easter eggs built into them, sequences and kind of 5-note patterns. But then some of them, like y'all said, would have larger intervals, and then you think, well, what is that interval? Is that going to be a major seventh, or is that going to be a minor seventh? Because it totally depends on what key I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
totally.
With just one page, I mean, you have almost like an infinite number of exercises. I think that's the genius of it. But the skill that he expected his students to demonstrate, I think, really sticks with me. It's like, I told you all before we started recording, but I went in for some assessment, and I did a little tonicization pattern, a little do, mi, so, la, so, fa. Now I sing the fa correctly, but when I was there, I was singing fa fa. I can't even sing it. I was singing the fa, but as a mi. I was singing a do re mi. I was singing that as a fa, and he stopped me. He was like, "Your fa's flat." And I sing it again. My fa's still flat, and I got so flustered. But I never sing that fa flat anymore on that tonalization, and it's something that is really common. I found with students is that the half step fa to me is really easy to mix that up, and I remember that, and I felt really embarrassed, but he was not like mean or anything. He just like, this is, you need to be able to do this, like these are the expectations, and the respect that he had for teaching music and teaching music theory, and how as a teacher you have to have these skills. Like it's not a negotiation. Like, yeah, you can, you can sing maybe, if you're gonna teach theory, or you can play maybe. No, like you had to do it all. Like it was high expectations of musicianship, which I really value and respect, and that's something that I'll always remember with Dr. Cho.
Yeah, I love that. I probably got this from him in some ways, but I love that for him. I think like theory came from oral skills. Not the other way around. You had to have just mad skills, mad musicianship, just like you said, in order to be able to teach effectively in the way that he taught us to teach. So I think a lot of PED classes don't even think about oral skills. So I love that ours was very oral skills heavy. Both semesters were. So what were you going to say, Ben?
I was going to say that you all can see that I have now saved, and I am looking at, in this moment, my notes from Dr. Cho's
That's awesome.
Pedagogy of Theory class. And the fact that I have saved these notes from 15 years ago, and you'll notice the date. I can see the date that I had them, 2008, September. We were talking about from lunarians to lunatics. Don't teach the way we were taught.
Yeah.
Has that ever been more true than the year 2023? Wow, that's come up time and time again on here. Are we teaching the way we taught, and how do you kind of revisit what you're teaching? And one of the reasons why I think Jenn had the tonal indexings plastered on the showers, because Dr. Cho believed in memorization and internalization. And if you have to memorize, it's not just there's knowing something, and then there was Dr. Cho's way of knowing something, which represented quite a bit more than what I think your average, especially first year and grad school student comes in, and in our spot, this is one of the first classes we all took in grad school. And I thought there was like an undergraduate kind of way of understanding. And then I walk into Dr. Cho's class and I think, if I can't play the Navy hymn in 4 different keys, changing the key every 4 bars, playing all the secondary harmony and everything.
While you go,
and singing while you go, top down. It was like, well, you don't really know the Navy hymn, do you? Come back later when you really know it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I thought I knew it. I could play the whole thing perfectly. I could sing the parts, but that wasn't Dr. Cho's knowing. It was really knowing in depth, being able to do it in different keys, and therefore having genuine musical literacy. And that was a really, really important change in the way I thought about knowing music that I was going to teach. Do I really know the piece that I'm going to teach? Could I play it down a step? Could I really understand how those modulations or different cadence patterns work? And then you start to realize when you do this memorization, you think, wow, I really do know the piece better. And I really do have a deeper understanding of the piece. And, I think that those of us that think of memorization sometimes as a bad thing, it's not always the case. Memorization is not necessarily always bad. There are ways in which memorization can enhance. Should you just do memorization? Well, no, of course not. That's just, the surface level of understanding, of course, is memorization. But I think to Dr. Cho's point, there is a lot to be said for truly knowing something and internalizing it. And some of those examples, when Dr. Cho, we had posted on UNT College of Music social about Dr. Cho, which, by the way, had the most shares and comments of any UNT College of Music post, which is a little mini testament to his legacy. But several people had shared these tunes that they had memorized or worked on with Dr. Cho. That was the first thing that came to mind, and many of them were still using them.
Silent dictation
in their teaching. That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Silent dictation. Right. Isolating.
I still do it. Yeah. I use
Such
a lot
a
of
good
those
skill.
same melodies.
Such a good skill. So yeah, to say that I refer to these notes and the fact that I still have them. I mean, how many class notes do you have from 15 years ago?
I have mine too, and they're from 20 years ago. Because I told you, first semester, master student. I wasn't even in the classroom yet. Yeah. I think you said it exactly right. Like, memorization might be a surface level skill, but you can't get to what's underneath until you go through the surface. So I think sometimes this idea that memorization is bad, or that like that's not the way we should approach things, is kind of a misunderstanding in some ways of Bloom's taxonomy, right? Like just because it's one of the early stages doesn't mean that it's not an important learning tool. So because this was me this morning. Until you have your key signatures memorized, you are never going to be able to do this as fast as you want to do it. Until you know which note names go together in a triad, you are never going to be able to figure out what seventh chord this is. All those things. So,
it seems like you said that today in a class, perhaps, Jen.
I did, probably more than once. Probably more than once.
Well, and it wasn't just memorization. It wasn't just like memorizing a score. It was singing it and playing it. I mean, it was all these different modalities, and so it wasn't just, this just a mental exercise. It was, okay, now you have to demonstrate it on the keyboard. Now you have to be able to sing it and do all these things. And so you're using all your different faculties to really know or really master this, right? And I think that's huge. I think memorization is at that kind of mastery level is really critical. To quote another important teacher in my life, John Mortensen, who we've had on the pod, he likes to say how, if you're going to be driving with a friend and the person driving is like, yeah, I'm a good driver, sometimes I get the brake and the gas pedal mixed up. You're not going to drive with that friend. You're never going to ride with them, right?
No.
And, and then you say like, yeah, I know my key signatures, or I know X, Y, or Z, whatever musical fact or ability, but I have to think about it a little bit. You have to kind of question that person's really mastery of that skill or that group of knowledge. Is like, you've got to be, it's instantaneous. You don't have to think about which pedal you're going to be pressing, because you've moved beyond that. So
yeah. I learned about comprehensive musicianship from him. He did this sort of interesting thing where we learned pedagogy, but we also kind of learned history of theory, or like the history of pedagogy of theory as we were going. So he talked a lot about comprehensive musicianship and about how it's really the best approach. If you're listening and you don't know what that means, it's when you have music theory and aural skills integrated, and keyboard, all of it's integrated one into the next. Because of course they're not just like separate skills. They all go together.
And conducting and composition and some music history, like all of it.
Yes, exactly. But he talked about the reason that like that didn't end up taking off the way people hoped it would was because the people couldn't teach that way. And that he wanted us to be able to effectively teach that way, even if we were teaching in programs where the classes were separate things. And that has stuck with me, obviously, for 20 years. I've thought about that a lot.
Yes, to quote Dr. Cho from his notes, you can't teach without understanding the true system. That's in my notes from 15 years ago. It's crazy, some of these notes in here. And this is followed by notes on Zhu, Z-H-U, who's the person who had realized the 12th root of 2. That kind of stuff. Dr. Cho knew that. And, man, Weber, Rameau, Caccini, I mean, this is like one page of my notes. I haven't even turned the page.
Yep.
And I've gotten all of this wealth of knowledge out of this one page. I can't even. The simpler the system, the wider the applicability. Spiral learning. How many times did he talk about spiral
Oh
learning?
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That just came back to me. Yeah, the spiral. Uh-huh. Yep.
Important stuff. Spiral learning. Bruner. I mean, not a music theorist, but
exactly,
integral to the
like
class.
educational, people too. Yeah.
Yeah, he had such a wide knowledge base and skill set that he just pull all these things together in a brilliant way.
Yeah. Now he did have us read. I forget we were split up into groups or something, and we each had to read some old theory textbook and report back on it. And somehow I ended up reading one of the ones that said that women can't do music theory.
Oh, is that the Eshmond? Is that right?
Maybe. Yeah, it might be that one. It was from it's very old text.
If any listeners know where that text is, I've been trying to find it because obviously I teach at a women's university and I really want to be able to pull that out, but I cannot find a copy of the Eshmond.
I feel like I have it because of that class. So I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, it basically was like, now if you are in the horrible position of having to teach a woman, good luck, because women do not have the intelligence or talent to comprehend music theory.
That should be said. Dr. Cho did not have that belief, of course.
No, he definitely did not.
No, it was for a project where we were talking about like the evolution of music theory textbooks across time, how they changed, like the earliest theory textbooks that were basically like Harmonie Lehre. They were like, fairly intense harmonic language books by people like Schoenberg, But then as you get into programs like the ones we went through and even just more developed like music education degrees and things like that, theory became a more kind of specific thing. So we looked at textbooks, but we also looked at pedagogy books because I think the Eshmond might actually have like a pedagogy bent to it.
I think it does.
Yeah, and we had to report on like what that book said that was like useful and what things had changed since then. And so I obviously was like, well, I'm going to read you this passage. I believe that this is not true.
Yeah.
And we all had a good laugh about it, if I recall correctly.
Wowza.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Ooh.
So I think, Ben, you may have had the most classes with him. I only had the one, and it was the same type of class, Jen, that you had. I think it was my first semester at UNT as a doctoral student for me, and I think it was a Monday, Wednesday at 9:00. But you had more though, right, Ben?
Yeah, I had voluntarily kind of signed up for his keyboard class, and I observed him teach, graduate review. I had purchased his course packet because I had like audited his class, and then I was able to purchase his course packet from the union, which is absolutely brilliant, by the way. Brilliant.
I think I have that somewhere.
Oh, it's great. I definitely still have it. I can see the picture of the cover on it.
Yes, yeah.
But really, really good stuff in there. Really good stuff. Musical examples that I don't know if anyone's familiar with OB. I think it's called OBL. I hope I'm not getting that acronym. Andy Davis will correct me if I am. OBL, which is object-based learning, where you have a set of objects that you are studying. I don't think Dr. Cho ever used that term, but I think he would kind of endorse that way of going about a semester of study because his course packets were structured that you had these musical objects of study and that you would really intensively go about them, right? And that was kind of this idea of the spiral learning, right? Exposition, looking at my notes now, repetition or reinforcement, and then application, to returning to these same objects. And the way his course packets were set up, he was saying if you understand this piece, right, you may first just understand the melody line that's in it, the bass line, some of the triads. Then you might understand the way the modulations work, right? And levels of understanding, but revisiting that same object. And I think that was something that he really believed in throughout several courses that he taught, was that kind of OBL style or approach to the way he put together his syllabi or syllabuses. I've heard that it actually, the original is supposed to be syllabuses. So now I'm starting to say syllabuses, but that'll be a conversation for another day.
That just sparked a memory of him teaching the Prelude in C,
Oh my gosh,
Prelude number
yes.
1 from the WTC. And that was one of those pieces where like you teach that on the first day, and you talk about any number, like simple things, right? And then you can come back to that piece over and over, throughout the semester. That just like jogged a memory. I remember that just now. Yeah.
I actually taught that a little bit of that piece today. Because we're doing seventh chords. We've looked at other sections of it actually before. It really is a perfect one because the harmonic rhythm is one per measure. It's very easy. There are 0 non-chord tones except maybe that one weird measure.
That's the Schwenke measure. That was also something I learned from because it was added in later because the original.
Oh, really?
The original Bach is odd numbered, like that prelude has like 31 measures, something like that, and there's that weird jump from like fa to lay or something like 3 quarters of the way through, and this guy named Schwenke, either Dr. Cho or Dr. Phipps, I think, taught me this. He later on he added this measure to kind of connect those two measures together to make it like 32 measures long or something like that. But yeah, the Schwenke measure.
Did
and it's
not
in,
know that.
It's in a lot of like early editions too. It's kind of crazy, but or you might see like in a bottom footnote like this added measure. But don't be a Schwenke and change Bach.
I mean, it's kind of a cool measure, really.
It is kind of a cool measure.
That's the one little like stepwise thing in there,
Yeah.
and you can debate whether it's what it is exactly, what chord it is exactly, because it's got lots of different things in it. But anyway, yes.
And he would always have us sing chords in a way that I had never sung them before. Always from the top down. And so instead of do mi so mi do, it would be do so mi. Of course I picked the wrong key to sing. Do so mi, and then do la fa, and I can't remember any of the other, like, do we go up to re? Do you go up to re, or do you go down to T?
Depending on whatever's in the melody.
Well, it's what's the what is in the melody.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a really interesting thing that a lot of people had referred to on the online as well, was that memorized chordal arpeggiations that were derived from the literature. They weren't just theoretical. They were from the literature, and he would kind of make you sing it from the melody note first. And the whole rationale was that you hear the melody line as the most prominent line acoustically, and then you would hear the harmony from the melody note. That was one of Dr. Cho's premises of aural skills.
And he would sing them so fast, those progressions.
So
fast.
He would listen to WRR, which is in the Dallas area. That's our classical music station. He would listen to that on the way to work. And then if he heard something interesting, he would just use it in class because he had done this so well and so much that he could just walk in and like sing those. So I remember there was one time we did like something from Brahms 3 because he heard it on the way to school, and he came in and he was like, well, what we have to do is this, lyrical melody from the whatever movement of Brahms 3, and here it is. And he just like sang it for us, and we're all like trying to frantically write it down. Wait, did he say me? Did he say me? Did he say fee? Did he and he's just going like it all just lives in there.
The sounds of Dr. Cho. One of them for me is definitely the sound of very fast chalk writing.
Yes.
He would have everyone come up to the board and then say, okay, it's the Navy hymn, or it's, it could even be Amazing Grace. He would say, write the melody to Amazing Grace. And you would see him do his, and maybe 10 seconds, probably a single digit. He had the whole melody and all the harmonies, cadence, it could have been in any clef, honestly, in any key, and he'd be done. And the rest of us are, we've got like the first two
We're like,
notes. We've
me
got
do,
like sol, do,
me.
right? Yeah. We have sol, do. And here's Dr. Cho's got the whole thing that says, see, this is where you need to be. If you want to teach a piece, you need to know it like this. And he would time you. The timing was an important part, that not, speed is not everything. Accuracy is the most important, but speed is also important. I say that all the time to my students. Accuracy is most important, but speed is important. To be able to do things quickly, right? Because you have your back towards your class, or you're writing something. You don't want your whole class to be them watching you write this melody for 10 minutes, and then finally you can say something about it after that. You want to boom, get that chalk going up there.
I took this very seriously to see like how fast I could get all of those silent dictation melodies down. And so to this day I can write like My Country 'Tis of Thee in 40 seconds or something like that, the whole thing. But I of course assigned these for my students as well. So if you don't know what we're talking about, essentially you have these like memorized melodies. They should be things the students already know. And when I teach them, I start by having the students figure it out. So they do their rhythm proto-notation for Amazing Grace first, like singing it kind of in their head as they go. And then they add the solfege to that, right? And then we transpose it to a bunch of different keys. And I will come in and say, okay, we're doing Amazing Grace today. It's in this clef, in this key. You get 2 minutes, go. So they have to be able to do it very quickly in any clef, any key, which of course requires you to have excellent solfege skills. But I had a class that argued with me that what I was asking for was unrealistic, and it was not possible to write out whatever it was, let's say My Country 'Tis of Thee, in the amount of time I was asking them to do it, which I believe was like 3 minutes. It's a lot of time.
Dr. Cho would have said 1 minute or bust.
Yeah. Yeah. So I told them, okay, I'll tell you what, you'll time me and I'll do it. And you can have 3 times the amount of time it takes me. I will give you whatever the amount of time it takes me to do it. You can have 3 times the amount of time. So they ended up with like 2.5 minutes or something like that after the end.
Backfired.
Yeah, they were not happy with me or themselves that day, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that speaks to the aspirational approach that he had in some ways. Like he was kind of showing you what you could aspire to be. It wasn't just being like, you should be able to do this because I say so. He's like, you should be able to do this because I can do this. And I'm going to show you what you need to aspire to be. And I think that can be really powerful to students to be like, wow, this person really knows their stuff. They're not just saying these things, but they can do it. And maybe then I can do it too.
Yeah.
Totally. And I'll add one more thing, that when I met Dr. Cho, I was not a music theory major. I was a music performance major that was searching for a minor, and I had to sign up for something. And having Dr. Cho's class really did steer me in the direction of music theory in a really positive, healthy way. And the skills that I acquired in Dr. Cho's class are just invaluable. So thank you, Dr. Cho.
Yeah.
I know you're listening. And we really do appreciate everything you've done. So maybe we should sing a tonicization.
Should we sing a little do mi sol la sol fa re ti do? Or
Do mi sol la sol fa re ti do.
You have to edit that right out because we were not together.
It's impossible via Zoom to sing together.
I know, that was pretty bad.
It would also seem like a disservice to not sing a tonicization, because I sing a tonicization almost every day, and that was Dr. Cho's tonicization that contains every syllable of a...
It contains every syllable, and it's in harmonic function order. It moves from tonic to law, which is in all the predominants, to the dominant, back to tonic. So I use that one with my students as well.
All the time. I'll never forget when he told us he was very upset to walk into a classroom that had all the solfege syllables in their chromatic scale, and they had Lee. And he's like, Lee does not exist because you can't have a leading tone of T.
Yeah, and he also didn't like say, he's like, if so is flat, you're not in that key. So we had to sing Fee on the way down.
Also, to say that Dr. Cho had a good ear would be the understatement of this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
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 Yep. Well, this was fun to kind of just reminisce and to share our memories and to thank Dr. Cho for what the difference he's made in our lives and obviously to so many students over the years. So I think we can just hope to have maybe a fraction of the impact that he had, and I think we'd consider ourselves successful.
For sure. 40 years, wasn't it? For over 40 years he taught at
43
UNT.
plus, yeah.
Wow.
You just made it to the end of another episode of Note Doctors, the music theory and pedagogy podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review the podcast, and you can always reach us at notedoctorspodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or show ideas. Thanks for listening.